What up? What is happening? This is Hoppe Hour. I am your host, Ryan Hoppe, and I'm very pumped to announce our next guest. We have Miguel Fuller from The Miguel Show on Hot 1015 in Tampa Bay. He is live. What's up, dude?
Hey, nothing much. Just hanging out on a dreary Monday in Tampa Bay.
But isn't it making you a lot more happier, and isn't your day a little more bright that you're live on Hoppe Hour?
Oh, most definitely. I've been looking forward to it. I've heard so much about it, especially after Seth was on. So I'm really excited to experience a Hoppe Hour.
I think everyone's really excited to experience this one and only podcast. So now I want people to get to know you because I have a lot of listeners in Cleveland and Chicago and Rochester. So they might not know who you are, but I want them to get to know you. So where did you grow up as a kid?
I actually grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. The ATL. I grew up, went to middle school and high school there, born there. Went to Roswell High School, then went down to South Georgia for college to Georgia Southern, home of Confederate flags and farms. Great time spent down there. Then I lived in Savannah doing radio for a year, and then went to Panama City, and now here in Tampa Bay.
Was Savannah where you got your first foot in the door in radio?
Actually, it was in this small town. I went to a 2-year school first, and it was in the small town called Douglas, Georgia, where the only nice restaurant we had was a Ruby Tuesday. So we got to have some delicious, steak tips and mashed potatoes. So we would do that every 2 weeks when we would get paid. And so I worked at a classic rock station here, actually, where I would run the NASCAR races on Sundays, and I would run the board for the high school football and basketball and baseball games. And my shining moment when I was there was during the election of 2004. And so they sent all of us on staff to the different voting precincts. And so we had to call in because literally this is so small town that as they were like tabulating the votes, all the reporters were just standing in the room, and like as they were coming out of the machine, we would just get it, call back, and report live on the air what the results were. And so that was my first time on the air there, and I felt like I was freaking Anderson Cooper. I was like, here are the poll results for this location. I was so excited. That was my first time on the air. That was my first break, was at WDMG, the big dog, rocking in South Georgia's backyard.
How nervous were you when you're like announcing the votes? Because the first time I was on the radio, it's weird. When you're talking, you feel comfortable at first, and then you go, I'm on the radio right now, and then you keep talking. Did you have that type of a moment?
It was nerve-wracking, but then I had gone over in my head several times what I was going to say. I always like to be as prepared as possible. Yeah. And so literally, like, instead of just, like, reading from the paper, I, like, wrote out exactly, sort of point for point what I was going to say. And, I mean, in all actuality, I was on the air for probably 45 seconds. Yeah. So it wasn't even, like, a long time. But those 45 seconds, like, I could have gone on to host the NBC Nightly News from that because I was like, this is my moment to shine.
And now from that big moment in 2004, did people hear you doing that? Like, how did you get your next foot in the door?
The next moment, after I finished and got my associate's degree there, I then went to Georgia Southern University, where I interned in Savannah at Clear Channel, which is now iHeartMedia, at their top 40 station, 97.3 KISS FM. And I interned there, and after 2 months of doing that, they hired me part-time to be a board op and weekend on-air talent. And so that's sort of like my first real on-air spot, and I was god-awful. I mean, my program director, that was my boss then, he ended up hiring me later on in my career in Panama City. And we always make the joke that after, like, my first or two times being on the air, I was like, so can I talk about stuff that's, like, not on the liner card? And he was like, listen, you're not that funny. Just stick to the liners and don't try to do the joke. Save that for the morning show. And I was so offended. I was like, because I want to be a morning show host one day. And so now we always joke about it. And I'm like, so how them liners working out for me now, bitch? So I started out from there, nerve-wracking, and then just sort of worked my way up. And I thankfully they offered me a full-time job when I graduated college.
Was this one of those things where did he believe in you, or did you get a vibe that you had to like prove him wrong and other people that may not believe in you when you say, I want to go into radio?
Almost definitely. I mean, here's the thing about radio, which, you know, for all of its glory, and it's correcting itself and it's getting better. In the radio industry, and especially at the heads of companies, you have people that are used to doing radio a certain way because they've been doing it since the 60s and 70s and 80s, where you have, you know, sort of like the straight, cynical morning show host. You have the giggle box girl as the news entertainment person, and then you have like the crazy guy who's on the streets or cracks the one-liners. And so people sort of looked at that as like the prototype of a show. And so when you have this gay black kid, you know, who is nuts, and I'm like, I want to lead my show, they were like, we love you and we think that you are a great guy, but we don't necessarily know if you will actually be able to host a show. And so I knew it was going to take a long time and different types of people to sort of, or people with sort of open brains to sort of let me drive the ship. And so for most of my career, I was third mic on a morning show. I was in that sort of like, ha-ha, crazy hookah hookah, I'm the crazy black guy saying crazy one-liners, I'm so crazy and gay. That was my career for a long time. And then finally someone said, we want to see what you can do in leading your own show. So it's been cool since then.
Did you ever feel any like discrimination early on because either you're black or you're a gay man, or did you ever think you had to prove something to people?
No one has ever said to me, you won't be successful because you're black or because you're gay. But with the whole like, well, you know, maybe you would be, I had a lot of people tell me when I was in Tampa Bay a few years ago on a radio station where I was third mic, and I was about to leave, or I was applying for different jobs, and someone was like, maybe you should just stick to being a third chair. You can make good money. You can, you know, make a successful career. You don't have to be the host. And so to me, that was sort of like a, you know, we think you're talented, but we just don't necessarily know if you have what it takes and if it can happen. And so there were definitely people who, like I said, they'd never said, oh, because you're black, you won't make it. And so there definitely, for me, has been I do have something to prove. I have to prove something, you know, being one of the first openly gay black men in the radio industry hosting a show. I feel like I got to fucking work my ass off to make it happen because I don't want, you know, to be a failure. And so it has been somewhat of a battle making sure that happens and sort of proving people wrong.
Now, I went through the same thing. My parents never believed in me. They never said I would go into radio. But as they saw my passion grow and grow, they seemed to believe in me even more. So did you have a hard time, like, proving your parents wrong? Like, yes, Mom, I want to go into radio. Or did they have your back since day one?
Thankfully, my mom is my biggest cheerleader. And literally, my mom lives in Atlanta, and she works in an office building in downtown Atlanta. And I'm pretty sure that everyone in the building listens to the show online. I mean, whenever I go home to Atlanta and we go out to eat, she will slide my business card to the server and be like, my son does a radio show in Florida. And I'm like, Mom, they don't care. They don't care. Or whenever she comes to visit, we'll go out to eat somewhere and she'll be like, do you listen to Hot 101.5? Because the Miguel show is my son and you need to listen. I'm like, Mom, once again, I appreciate it. So she couldn't have been more supportive, and she's always, you know, told me, as long as you're happy, I'm happy. So that's been really cool.
Now, you worked on That Guy Kramer in the morning show on Island 106 from 2008 to 2011. What was that like?
That was interesting. Kramer is one of my best friends. Him and I actually went to college together.
Oh, nice.
And we were roommates for a little bit before he actually got the job in Panama City. And then I came down about a year later to work with him. It was like the wild, wild west when we started. It was Kramer, my current co-host Holly, and myself. And then we had our intern who became our producer, Mandy Williamson. She was with us. And we used to do just some of the craziest stuff because this was Panama City Market 240. It was a mom and pop radio station, so there weren't any oversights. There weren't legal saying you can't do this. Probably, like, to me, one of like the craziest things we did is we were talking about a story. This is years ago. where Simon Cowell said that he had a couple offer to pay him X amount of dollars to watch them have sex and for him to critique them. So we're talking about the story on air, and we're like, oh, that's so funny. And we were like, I wonder if anybody would let us critique their sex tape.
Oh,
that would be
wow.
crazy. Just throwing it out there. Well, lo and behold, someone calls up to the radio station, and they say, hey, I have a sex tape with my boyfriend. We've been wanting someone to judge us. So Kramer, Holly, myself, our producer, Mandy, all went to my house. We sat on the couch and watched this sex tape together.
Are you serious?
It was the most awkward 15 minutes I have ever experienced in my entire life. And so then we went on the air the next Monday and we critiqued them. Obviously, we didn't get into too much detail.
Oh, you can't.
It was just more so like, oh, your passion could have, been a little bit greater here. And he could have been a little bit more this. And,
Wow.
the toys that you use, maybe, I mean, it was insane. And we got to just try a bunch of different stuff that, now, being in a bigger market, when you have a corporation over you with a legal team that you wouldn't be really able to try. And also it was just a learning experience. This was all of our first morning show professionally that we done. And so just sort of learning how to build chemistry, how to have flow, how to have pacing, how to have that team camaraderie and always know where the next person is going. And so just learning all of those sort of basics of morning radio, that's what that time was spent doing.
Now, when you did these like wacky bits, like watching someone's porno, did you ever think you might get in trouble? Because if I were you, I would get a little bit nervous because at some point you can't just keep doing these wacky bits. Like, I don't find that offensive at all. But were you guys ever afraid when you were going to do the bit on air? You're like, here's to hoping no one tells on us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there were this was like an ongoing, it was a storyline on the show for a good 2 or 3 weeks where we would be like, should we do it? Should we not do it? We talked to our PD on the air. We talked to the market manager on the air, and we were like, should we do it? Should we not do it? A lot of people said we should. A lot of people said we shouldn't. And so there's always this, question mark on if you will turn off listeners.
Yeah.
But something that I've learned in my career is that when you build that trust with your listeners and they are your family, like I do consider the listeners in Panama City family, they allow you to get away with stuff. Like you couldn't start a new show and do that sort of thing. Like you have to build the trust where they know you're not doing it to be nasty. Like you literally just threw it out in passing and a listener trusted you enough to say, hey, look at my tape, which by the way, I then would see this couple out in public.
Oh my God.
At club events and at family, a downtown, First Friday type deal. But they just trust you enough where they're like, it's okay. I understand that that guy Kramer show, they get a little wacky, but it's okay. We still, we know that they have our best interests at heart.
What is your take on the whole fake outrage thing where people try to get radio hosts fired or TV hosts? Now, let's say if you did that in a big market and you were to get fired, how would that feel?
I feel like as long as you were not in jeopardy of losing the license of the radio station, then I think that everything should be fair game. But with the caveat, you have to understand as a broadcaster, you are broadcasting to a lot of people. And so you have to make sure that, one, you have that relationship with your audience, that if you say something, that it's not going, they understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Right now, we're in the beginning phases of, my show on Hot. And so the audience, they're still getting to know us right now. So I can't go on there and just, say some crazy, remark. Whereas 2, 3, 4 years down the line, when the audience knows me, there are things that Mike Calta and Drew Garabo can say on their show because they've been brought, especially with Mike Calta, he's been here since 1989 in the market. And so he can say things that other people wouldn't be able to. So I think that when people get upset and they get people fired, I always try to, say that's someone's job, that's someone's livelihood. But also, what were your intentions and what were you trying to say, when you said it? So it just all depends on what the people are talking about.
How weird was it, as we go back to your radio career, from Panama City to Tampa Bay, and then you were back in Panama City? What was that like when you were back in Panama City for 2 years?
I will be completely frank with you. At first, I was super excited because I was doing my own show, and what better way to start a new path in your career than to do it where you know people love you?
Yeah.
And so me figuring out how to host a show, all the stuff we had to figure out years ago, I then had to go back and redo it again in Panama City, and it was the perfect place to do it. By the end of the 2 years that we were there, I knew that I was sort of itching to get out. I knew, because I love the people of Panama City. That is my second home. I will still spend, holidays there. I have some of my best friends there. But I knew that I wanted to go to that next step. I wanted to get to that next level. And so I was ready. I was very ready. I do miss the people of Panama City, but so it was a cool experience going back and sort of just going back to where it's comfortable and starting your own new journey. So it was really cool.
What is it like when you go from a small market like Panama City and then you get hired 5 months ago in a major market of Tampa Bay? Like, who was the first person you called?
Well, the way that it works, it's a long process. I got a call from our program director last fall.
Yeah.
And because I've met, his name is Dan, and I've met him before. And so when he called me, and I was like, oh my God, what could this possibly be about? And so you get excited, but then you're like, okay, there's a lot of steps that have to happen between him, the first contact, and then sending audio, and then the interview, and then more audio listening, and then more talking, and then you talk to other people, in the food chain, and then negotiations start, and then that's when you're like, okay, this is getting nervous. But when we finally, everything was negotiated, and we said, all right, we're going, I called my mom, and I had to be like, it's happening. It's happening. My dream is coming true of going to a top 20 market to do my own morning show.
Now, I've wanted to ask you this before off air, so now I have the chance to ask it on air.
Uh-oh.
How hard was it to leave Mandy and producer Jimmy as you and Holly were going to a major market?
Ooh, look at you with the hard-hitting questions. Look at Ryan Hoppe going for the blood. And no one has actually asked me that, so I applaud you. That's a good question to ask. That was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. To leave someone that you love and care about, and that you know that you're about to upset them. That's a really hard thing to do. And it's something that I would not wish that on anyone else. We're friends. I actually was just texting with Mandy yesterday, but unfortunately it was one of those situations where Hot 1015 offered the job to just Holly and I. And so you have to make that judgment call of, do you wait? Do you take it? What do you do? And so I just felt like this was the situation that I really wanted to be in personally. Holly felt like this was the right situation for her and her family. And so we had to make that judgment call. But then also at the same time, I also made sure that Mandy was taken care of in Panama City, that she just wasn't going to get fired. And so they are taking care of her. She's on a new show. She's having a wonderful time doing that. But it was really rough. Jimmy, he was our intern, and he had just been hired probably 6 months before that. So he was okay. He's fine. It was expected that, if we went somewhere, we wouldn't be able to take him along. But Mandy, that definitely was a tough thing to do.
Now, this is one thing I've been very confused about, or I just don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
Like when a radio host moves, and let's say you can't break out of your lease, how hard is that? Like, can you negotiate around it? Like when a radio host moves from city to city?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I moved from Cleveland to here in Tampa, I sort of had to break the lease, but they made me a deal. So, like, how does that work for, like, grown-ups?
Yeah. He said, how do the grown folk do it? I don't understand. Actually, I have been very lucky that every time in my career, when I moved, it was the end of a lease.
Oh, my God.
Because I've also wondered that as well. The thing that sucked about this past move from Panama City to Tampa was my lease was up at the end of January. And they were still trying to decide, like, what was happening with the show, if we were going to get it. And so I was like, well, I don't want to renew my lease. And so I had to move all of my stuff into a friend's house. And I stayed with him for 3 weeks. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I was like, well, if we don't get the job in Tampa, then I'm going to move into another apartment because I was over that apartment complex anyway. But if we move, then obviously all my stuff will be packed, ready to go, because I had to do that to move into my friend's house. But every other time I've moved, it's literally worked out seamlessly that the lease ended and then a new opportunity happened.
Now, what are some of the things you do on the Miguel show that people would love immediately? Like, what are some of the bits and, like, the type of music you guys play on Hot 101.5?
One of the big things that we hear about that people enjoy about our show is the chemistry between Holly and I. Because Holly and I are best friends. We lived together for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And we've worked and lived together for a long time. And so just our, like, sort of Hot in Hollywood at the top of the hour every day, every morning, and then trending in Tampa, people just enjoy that sort of sitting around the table. We're just chatting about stories and hot topics and things like that. So people really enjoy that. People really, really, really enjoy Blown Off. That was something that the previous morning show did, and I wasn't too keen on doing it at first, but people absolutely love it, and it makes them happy. Like, that's what I've been surprised about, is I've had so many people come up to me since we've been doing it for the past, I think, 3 or 4 weeks, and they're like, oh my God, thank you so much. It just makes them laugh before work. Also, we do a bit called Bad Boyfriend Poker, where we have 2 girls going head-to-head with the stories of their bad exes, and we do that every Thursday at 8:25. People love that because some of the stories we've had of the stuff that guys have done, it is so nuts, and it surprises me that every week we have new callers that call in with these crazy-ass stories. We do that. And then also we do a bit that people like is All the Feels on Tuesdays at 7:25, where Holly and I pick out stories that sort of give you the feels, that make you feel good. And then we have people call in with, like, the good news and the good stuff going on in their lives. And it just really kind of gives you the goosebumps, when you listen to, all the positive energy.
Now, this is one thing that I want to know about, too. When you do these bits, do you ever get nervous that people aren't going to call in, or do you sort of know that you'll get the calls for these, like, segments?
All the time. Every time I get nervous. There's not a time when I throw out that phone number, and I'm trying to think, what was something we did recently? Oh, brain, don't fail me now. Oh, there was a lot of alcohol this weekend. I don't remember what it was, but it was, what was? I can't remember what the topic was, but, you set up the story, and then you say, all right, has anyone ever done this, or have you done this? 877-999-1015, call us up, the new Hot 1015. And then you just stare at the phones, and you stare, and you stare. But then I have to remember there's a 16-second delay. So I'm like, all right. So in my head, I count to 16 seconds. And then by the time I get to 17, 18, if the phone doesn't start ringing, I'm like, we're a failure. No one's listening. Why'd they hire us? We should. Oh, look, all the phone lines are lighting up. So there's only been one topic where but someone called in right before we went on. So thankfully, knock on wood and call to Jesus' name, that every topic we've thrown out there, we've always gotten a phone call since we've been here at Hot, which I'm very thankful for, because there's always a couple of seconds where my butthole clenches up real tight.
Now, what are some parts about Tampa Bay that you love so much? Like, is it the nightlife? As you just said, you drank a lot over the weekend. Was that from getting turned up at the clubs? Like, what do you love to do out here?
I really enjoy, first, the food scene, because I am a fatty at heart. And so I love food so much. So just trying out all the different restaurants. Oh my God, it's so amazing. There were so many options here. And I love that there are different moods to this city. Because, I grew up in Atlanta. And it's a big city, but it's all pretty much standard fare. You dress up, you go out to a nice place. Here, you've got the beaches. You can go for the beach feel if you want to, go hang out in that area. You can go to downtown St. Pete, where it's more of like a chill hipster feel. You can go to Ybor, where it's ratchet as hell, and you can get turned up and get wasted and go find somebody to do in an alleyway or something. Oh. I love that they're just not that I've done that. Not saying that I've done that before.
Shock jock over here.
Not at all. But, there's just so many options, and I love that you can be like, what am I feeling tonight? Now I can sort of go and try out that scene for the night. I love that.
Now, I want the radio world to get to know about you and your personal life, since we've talked about your radio career. As a gay man, when did you know that you were attracted to guys? Like, what age when you were growing up?
Birth.
Really?
No, I'm kidding.
I was about to say.
It was, it's sort of, this is how I always, and I always ask straight people this. I say, when did you know you were straight? Like, when did you know? Like, it's not something where all of a sudden this light bulb goes off and you're like, ooh, I'm gay. I just remember when I was in elementary school, I really loved this kid named Blake Smith. Like, I wanted to hang out with Blake. I wanted to wear the same shorts that Blake had on. I wanted to sit next to him in art class and everything. I loved me some Blake. That's all I knew. Then as I got older, I remember kids used to make fun of me, and they would call me faggot, and they would call me queer, and they would call me sissy. There was one time they actually threw rocks at me as I was walking home from school one day. And I didn't understand in my brain back then why they were doing it. And I was just like, why are they being so mean? I just like to laugh and have fun, and I was the class clown and make people laugh. And then it wasn't until I was in the 6th grade and we got MTV, and I saw The Real World Miami, and they had a character on there named Dan who was gay. And I remember they had they run marathons forever on shows like that. And I remember sitting there watching The Real World and Dan, and he was dating this guy named Joe. And I remember they were sitting on a dock holding hands, and they kissed. And I was like, oh my God, I think that's what I am. I think I'm gay. And so from there, it's a long process to sort of accept that. Because then you go into hiding and you're like, well, I know that that's what I am, but I can't tell anybody that I'm that. And so then you go into hiding, and it's a horrible, horrible process to go through that. But yeah, so that was sort of the first time that I conceptually, I knew this is what I am. And I knew that my life was going to take a different path than everyone else's.
When you were going through this process of hiding, were you very nervous to tell your friends and family? Or did you know at some point they would accept it?
I was very nervous. I was terrified. I thought that I would be ostracized. I thought that no one would, I would get disowned, that no one would talk to me. I always describe being in the closet as sort of like this weight on your shoulders. And it's sitting there, and everything you do, every thought you have is wrapped up into being gay. And so I would be in high school, I would be writing notes as the teacher's talking. I'd be like, I think my head is cocked to the side too gay. I think I'm writing too gay. I think the way I raise my hand is too gay. I think that this binder that I have is too gay. I think that the way that I'm walking out of the classroom is gay. Everything is surrounded by that, and you don't want to be discovered. And then finally, when I was in the 10th grade, I just had enough, and I just fell out in the cafeteria one day during lunch and just started sobbing. And my friends were like, what is wrong with you right now? And so they ended up taking me to the counselor's office, and that's when I told the very first person that I was gay, because I was like, I just can't take it anymore.
How huge was it when Caitlyn Jenner came out for the LGBT community? Like, what was the first thing you thought of?
I thought this is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Because coming out as transgender, well, first off, being transgender and being gay, obviously two totally different things. I don't understand the transgender mind. I don't understand what that struggle is like. I have friends that are transgender, and they've tried to, communicate that. And it's sort of like me sitting here trying to tell you what being gay and what that was like. You can empathize, but it's hard to understand. I don't understand, but I think that we have someone that was the epitome of masculinity saying, I know that I was born a woman, and now he can live in that truth. I think it's awesome. I was very, very, very happy that we have this sort of mainstream model and role model. And to me, what I really, really love about it is older people who grew up knowing Bruce Jenner as the Olympic hero. They get to see this transition, not just, there's some new, like Laverne Cox on Orange is the New Black. Like my grandmother wouldn't be able to understand that, but like seeing Bruce Jenner go through that and the struggle, I think that is helping leaps and bounds, and also giving transgender kids someone to look up to.
Now, before I let you go, let's say I were a gay man and I used the app Grindr. What would I be? Like, I know that there's bears and cat daddies. Where would I fall under if I were trying to get laid on Grindr?
If you were on Grindr, what would you be? Let's do this real quick. Let me pull up Grindr, actually, so I can read to you some of the the descriptors on here. Because I always find it, it's called Grindr Tribes. That's what you can click.
Oh, man, they got a whole setup there.
They do. So these are the different options you could choose from, okay? Bear, Clean Cut, Daddy, Discreet, Geek, Jock, Leather, Otter, Pause, Rugged, Trans, and Twink.
What's a geek?
A geek, I feel like that's what you would be under.
Obviously.
A geek, because you're someone who, and you know what, part of my profile says I'm a radio geek, so that's fine. That's just someone who gets really excited, usually over like gaming or what else do they do? Like Magic the Gathering or whatever.
That might not be me then.
But also like techies, like people that are into like technology and whatever you get really excited. Like I would put geek. I have I'm not going to tell you what mine is. You just have to find me on Grindr. But like, stuff that you're excited about. Like I would put geek because I love like TV, like Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad and Mad Men, How to Get Away with Murder, stuff like that. So I'm a TV geek. Also a radio geek. I am an official radio nerd. I love learning and reading about radio and stuff. So I think you would either be geek or clean cut.
What's that?
Clean cut, just someone who, there's not too many thrills. There's not too many frills. You're just sort of like very regular.
I don't think that's me.
Yeah, that's not. What are you? Oh.
That's implying that I'm a boring person who just kind of goes about my day, doesn't do too much. I mean, that's not me, Miguel. Let's be honest here.
I don't know much about you, so I don't know. I don't know what you do outside of the radio studio.
Get turned up, working out.
Okay, you get turned up, and then do you partake in women? I'm assuming.
I try. I mean, I go to the club and I see a hot piece of ass and I'm attracted immediately. And
then do you go for it?
I try.
You try? How do you try?
You go up, you buy them a drink. I got to work on my game. I got to learn how to like spit it. But I mean, I attempt it. You know what I mean, Jelly Bean?
So when you I'm really curious how this works. So when you attempt it, like what do you say? Like if there's an attractive female and you buy her a drink and then you slip a Quaalude in there.
Oh Jesus, Bill Cosby.
So then, like, what do you do? What's your first line?
See, that's one thing I have to work on, and I've admitted because I'm not the best around girls, but I try to ask them something where it'll be about them and it's not about me because no one cares when I babble, like right now. Like, I want to make them feel comfortable, so I'll be like, how's it going? How's your day going? Where do you work? What's your social security number? You know what I mean?
I think you need to go for it. You need to be aggressive. Not Bill Cosby aggressive, but you need to compliment them. Girls love when you compliment and then you listen. But at the same time, being at the club, it's hard to like meet someone.
So loud.
It is. Unless you're just looking to bang, then you can definitely make that happen.
Bang them out. Yeah, when you're at the club and there's like a attractive gay man, you're like, that guy's a 10 out of 10, big muscles, nice ass. And now that's for us girls when there's a nice butt and like big boobs. Sometimes those are the most cockiest girls that have big egos. Is that how it works at like a gay club?
Pretty much. Usually that's the MO, but then those are the people that you don't pay attention. Well, here's two things I've learned in my years in going to gay bars is that people that are the most attractive, even though they're acting very cocky, they're usually the most, they usually have the lowest self-esteem because they've worked so hard to make their looks to get those looks that they're usually dying for attention. Because they're so hot, people don't go up to them. So if you're the person ballsy enough to go up to them and to talk to them and show them a little bit of attention, but not praise them with too much attention, they'll go home with you.
Now, here's one thing I've been very confused about, or I don't know much about. Now, when you go to a club and you see a hot girl, she has on all the makeup and she's dressed nice. What is the male version for like a gay man? How do they dress up to make them look the best they can be possible?
Well, it depends on what sort of guy you're talking about. If you're talking about like a bear, then okay, I'm going to describe a typical night. If I go out to this place in St. Pete called Enigma in downtown St. Pete.
Oh, man, it sounds like a good place.
It is. The drinks are strong. Ryan, got to come out there one night. Yeah, find you a nice little man. Yeah, we'll get you hooked up. Most guys there sort of like, you got shorts that like are a little short that, reveal a little bit.
Oh, man.
Like I don't wear shorts,
yeah,
but I
you
do wear, not shorts, but I do CrossFit. And so I have very nice legs. Yeah, I work out. So I want to show off my thighs. I want you to see those powerful thighs. And I want you to imagine me having you down on the bed with these powerful thighs.
Oh, geez. We're getting edgy over here.
And I'm just describing a typical night. And so you want to show off your best asset. Also, I happen to have sometimes nice arms, depending upon if I go to CrossFit that week. And so I will wear like a short button-up shirt and it'll be just tight enough to where my muscles are popping out just a little bit. So with my powerful thighs and my powerful arms, I bring them in like that.
Oh, wow. Now, what is your go-to pickup line when you see that gorgeous hot guy and you're trying to bring him home?
Hi, my name is Miguel Fuller. I'm on the radio. No, actually, you know what? I've never in my life used a pickup line. I always just, like, I'm thinking about a few weeks ago when my friend and I were out and we were sitting at a table at the bar and there was a table of guys next to us. And then after a few drinks, I'm like, oh, they look cute. I'm just like, hey, what's your name? What's your deal? And then I just start talking to people. That's all. I see the value in pickup lines because it's an icebreaker, and I feel like that's more useful in the straight world. But I feel like in the gay world, like if you just go up and just start talking, like, hey, so what's your name? Like, I'm new here, just trying, what do you do? Yada, and then just go from there. It's fine, but I don't really use pickup lines.
Have you ever bought another guy a drink?
I've spent half my paycheck on buying guys drinks
Jesus,
before.
You're trying to get laid.
And it doesn't work. I have done it before, and I've been like, ha-ha, I'm going to get this, yeah! And then he goes hand in hand out the door with someone else, and then I take an Uber home sad, and I have them stop at Taco Bell.
How heartbreaking is that? Because I've bought these hot girls drinks. Like, there was this one girl I liked a lot in Cleveland, and I bought her a drink, and then she ended up banging out my friend's cousin at the apartment. We had the after party. Has something like that ever happened to you?
All the time. There was actually a couple months ago, my friends were at this club, and I struck up conversation with the guys next to us. And so there was one in particular, I was like, hey, how you doing? And so we're chit-chatting, and his friends leave, and he's like, well, are y'all going to stay? Are y'all going to go? We're like, we're going to stay here. We're going to go to another bar. So he comes with us. We walk to the next bar, and in my drunk mind, I'm thinking, he's coming home with me. Yes, I'm about to use my powerful thighs. And then at the end of the night, I'm like, hey, I have some more alcohol in my house. My pool and my hot tub is open 24 hours. Wow. Why don't you come over? And my friend is like, yeah, come on over. So it's the three of us in this hot tub, and I'm like, yeah. I go use the bathroom, I come back, and my friend and the guy are making out.
Oh, Jesus. How heartbroken were you, Miguel?
Horrible. I was like, I bought you a drink, I have given you alcohol at my house, I have let you use my freaking hot tub, and now you two are going to do it. So they did it.
Now, I would love to have you on again where we can bitch and complain about our failed romantic life. But before we let you go, because you have a program meeting that I don't want you to be late for,
Thank you.
Where can people find your work online and on the radio?
Yeah, you can go to hot1015tampabay.com, click on the Miguel Show. We post all of our segments there. Also, if you download the Hot 1015 app, there's a little tab that says the Miguel Show. We post all of our audio. You can hear blown off. Also, every week, Holly and our producer Nikki, we do an uncensored podcast. Where we cuss and we
sort of like this.
I know that shouldn't be the big selling point is that we cuss, but we get to talk about things because we are under limited time restraints when we do our regular show on the airwaves. And so the podcast is a way for us to sort of get into that long form stuff and to talk about the other stuff that we couldn't get to during the show. But you can find that on the Hot 1015 app. You can find me on Twitter, Miguel Fuller, for Instagram and Snapchat. And I love Snapchat, so you can snap me, Miguel Fuller.
Now, I would love to have you on again to talk about our failed romantic life and more about radio. And I wanted to get your take in the news, but you have to go to the meeting, which is fine. So, Miguel, thank you for coming on Hoppe Hour. It was an honor, dude. Because when I met you last year at the morning show boot camp, who would have thought 12 months later you would be in the Dove Room at the Cox Media headquarters in Tampa, sitting in on this riveting podcast?
I wouldn't have thunk it, not for the world. And I'm happy for you and all of your success.
Thank you, man. This has been Hoppe Hour. We have more guests coming up this week. Peace out.
Hoppe Hour. Hoppe Hour. This is an official broadcast of Hoppe Radio. For more info, check out hopperadio.com and hoppesworld.com.